Wanted to make a video about right-wing lies. I hear a lot of people. The right wing has convinced the right wing in the United States has convinced the people, the working people, that it's good for them to not make too much money. It's good for them to be poor, because if they make more money, if they paid more money, all of a sudden they won't be able to afford anything. That is the absolute truth. They've convinced people that if they pay more money, if they get paid more money, they won't be able to afford anything. Listen to the oxymoron on that. So now the arguments behind this is that they're now going to be in a tax bracket where they're going to be taxed more. For instance, I read a post on Facebook the other day about a lady who's a teacher. She's which is scary to see that there are teachers out there who are actually against a salary increase when they're being paid starvation wages. Compared to what all the expenses they have. So, and the Republicans just took away their deduction for classroom materials that they could take before. So the Republicans just stole from the teachers, and the teachers are now intimidated by the Republicans, but they're going to vote for Ron DeSantis, because don't you know that Ron DeSantis has the best interest of the teachers? Oh, the gall, the stupidity behind that. Listen, there's an easy fix to all of that. Vote against every one of the right wing. Vote all Republicans out. All of them. Vote them all out. And then vote Democrat and have them rewrite the tax code to where the loopholes of the corporations, who, by the way, just got a gigantic tax gift from all of us, the workers, from the teachers, from people out there working, in the form of about $1.5 trillion from the U.S. taxpayers, so that they're now not going to have to pay. And notice how all of a sudden they have money to give away for corporations who are supposed to use this money to hire people, but there is nothing in the law that forces them to do so. It's just some type of miraculous osmosis that all of a sudden they're gonna feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and they're gonna want to share their good fortune with the workers. Well, it's not gonna fucking happen. Okay, they're gonna do what they always do. Corporations, when they're not checked by the government and the people, they're gonna stash the money away in the Caymans or other tax havens. They're gonna buy back their own stocks, and to keep their stock prices artificially high, they're going to fire people in the United States, and they're going to hire them from move their production facilities to China, India. They're going to subcontract services that they can subcontract to other countries, and all of this, they're doing it on your tax dollar. So it's really simple. You know who's giving away the money, your money, to the politicians and to the corporations without any accountability. So vote for the people who want to do the opposite of that, which is give tax breaks to the middle class, close the loopholes on the corporations, so that they have to pay more taxes and not get tax handouts, and you'll see the economy. Let me give you a number. During the Clinton years, 90%. There was a 90% tax on capital gains. What does that mean? That if you made money and you cashed it, say you had a stock and you bought it at $10, and you took that stock and you sold it at 100. Well, you made $90. Out of those $90, you had to pay $81 in taxes. Now, is that fair? I don't think that's fair. But the principle was that they did not want the people taking the money out of the market, and they had to, in order for those, if the companies wanted to use their their stock revenue, their earnings from their stocks, they couldn't just cash it away and stash it in the Cayman Islands. They had to, the break they got was, okay, if you invest it in, in machinery and, jobs, there were a bunch of ways they could get exempt from that 90% capital gains, so they wouldn't have to pay 90%. So that forced the companies to invest, the corporations to invest in the United States. And that's why when Bill Clinton left office, he left with a surplus because of all the investment in infrastructure. Now, the other argument as far as, if we get paid more, things are going to be more expensive. I don't know if you've noticed, but they say we have to lower the cost of living. The cost of living, you can pretty much write off that it's never going to go down. And for companies to be competitive, there has to be certain things that happen. One of them is they can't be allowed to establish monopolies. They can't be allowed to be big corporations to buy other big corporations, because then they get to keep their prices high. This business of letting business regulate itself is stupid. I don't know if you remember, how many years did it take for gasoline companies to remove lead from their gas, which was killing us left and right. And it's still in the atmosphere because we pumped so much of it out into the air, and it went into our water supply, into everything. It took 20 years for them to stop fighting, even though they knew full well of the impact that this was having. How many years did it take the tobacco companies to start to admit that their products cause cancer, and to have warnings labels on their packages, and to admit that their product was addictive? How many years? It's endless. Companies, they're still doing it. I can know if a product kills a certain amount of people. For instance, the Ford Pinto is a classic example. They knew that if that thing got hit, they tested it before they sold it to the people, and they still sold it, knowing that if they got in a rear end impact, they could catch on fire because of their test. They knew that, but they still sold it because they knew that their sales profits were going to be higher than the amount they were going to lose in lawsuits. So we can't allow corporations to regulate themselves. Because we'll go back to child labor laws. We'll go back to people working until they die in their factory. We'll go back to people getting hurt in which we're going back here. Florida is one of the worst workman's comp states in the world. We're gonna, if we allow corporations to regulate themselves, they'll turn us into the Matrix, where they just have a bunch of people hooked up to machines, drawing their blood and using their blood to or their heat in their bodies to power the machines that make them rich. So no, the government exists to control the corporations, to control their greed, and we have to keep them in check. So this business. And here's the other one. It's not voted for people who constantly, notice how the right-wingers, Republicans, they always have money for wars. I don't care how hard is the times are in the United States. There's always money for a war. It's people say, and then they have the gall, the audacity, the right-wingers do, to blame China and India and I don't know who else, the aliens, for for the job losses and the infrastructure crumbling. If you hadn't spent $16 trillion in illegal wars, killing 1 million people in the Middle East and destabilizing it and turn it into these quote unquote terrorist area where terrorist organizations are hiring left and right because of the power vacuum that the United States warmongers and the war companies and the weapons companies, because what they did, we wouldn't be in this situation. We imagine if instead of spending almost 60% of discretionary spending in war, we spent maybe 40% and took that 20% and put it into the pockets of the people, so they could afford housing, so they could afford health care. Imagine if we allowed people to the Medicare to negotiate prices with drug companies. Imagine if we regulated prices on drug companies. Imagine if we provided universal health care. Imagine all of that, and say, oh, that would cost too much. Really? It would, so you're saying that it's okay for us to spend $16 trillion. Out of those, 1.5 or 1.3 trillion dollars went to develop the biggest piece of shit fighter airplane, the F-35. $1.3 trillion to one company, Lockheed. And how much more corrupt does that get? We need to get a hold of spending, and the answer is not don't raise the salaries. Yes, raise the salaries and stop spending in war, and we would have very prosperous country where and then go away from fossil fuels and move into renewables. Renewables provides way much more employment, and also, just to give you an example, per $1 billion of dollars invested in healthcare, you get something like 11,000 jobs. Per 1 billion of jobs in the war industry, the quote unquote defense is nothing but war, you get 3,000 jobs. So it's almost 4 times as many jobs if you invest in healthcare than if you do in war. So the answers are right there. You just need to vote out these assholes and stop believing their lies. So vote these assholes the way, hopefully we'll teach them a lesson in November and in 2020.